And we are live. G'day everyone, Mike Jeffrey here, and you are listening to My Creative Journey, episode number 35. To all your listeners out there, hello, and thank you so much for taking the time to stop by here today. As I said, my name is Mike, and I'm a photographer, podcaster, and small business owner based here in Sydney, Australia. Each week on the show, I bring you guys along on the highs and lows of my own creative journey and share all the knowledge that I've gained along the road to building my own freelance business. In this week's episode, I'm talking a little bit about the anxieties and the fears that I have around going back to work after these lockdowns and all these restrictions. So I think this one's going to be a really good episode, and you guys, again, will gain a lot from it because as I've been speaking to a lot of other people, I think that this is a big thing in the community and a big thing for a lot of people transitioning back into work and when that eventually has to happen. But before we jump into that, let me talk about what has been going on for me this past week. And to be honest, not quite as much as what has been going on in the past couple of weeks. It's been really hard to sort of stay motivated during lockdown. But one thing that I did speak about last week was me trying to improve my sort of presence on sort of social media and things like that. So trying to get myself out there and put as much actual content out there into the world as I possibly could, using some of this downtime to advertise myself and sort of get my services out there in front of as many people as possible. And over the course of the past week, I think that was something that I've been trying to reflect on. I think it's been something that I've always been very reflective on, is my use of social media, and something that I know is good for me in business, but I also know is not so great for me personally. And I sort of have to walk that line of knowing how to sort of balance that, because sometimes I can get too caught up in thinking that I have to continually be sort of posting on there, when sometimes it's not actually improving anything, and sometimes it's just sort of feeding into the algorithm, as you might say, and sort of just being on there because the algorithm wants me to be there. So over the past weekend, I actually took the weekend off Instagram, and that was actually really refreshing for me to have a bit of time away. I hadn't taken time away from Instagram in an active state like that for quite a while. You know, I've obviously taken time away from it overnight. I've had like mornings off, things like that, but I've never actively sat down and taken that sort of whole weekend off Instagram. And that was something that I really enjoyed, because I think it opened me up to knowing what was important, knowing what actually needed to be out there in the world, not thinking about the first thing you have to do is to be able to take a photo of something and really post it on social media. So I was glad for that, but then also it gave me time to reflect on what my sort of strategies need to be moving forward. And I was definitely at a stage there last week where I was really posting a lot of content. I was really happy that I was posting that content because I was trying to, as I said, advertise my print store. And that was something that I was working up and trying to produce as much content as I possibly could in order to produce that. So I was really glad in the way that was able to sort of happen, and all the content seemed to be sort of producing itself, and I was really enjoying the process. But easy to get very caught up in producing too much content and not seeing where you can stop, and sort of reflecting on how you can make that more streamlined. And so I think this week I've been trying to work on that process and streamlining some of the content that I am posting and how I'm posting the content as well, and looking at how I can not be working on that as much outside of work hours, because I consider that mostly to be a work task. So trying to control myself to only work on it during work times and not spend as much time on it outside. I think that one of the things that I got very caught up in was explaining it to myself in a way that I saw Instagram as a work tool. So any time I spent on there, it's not really for using social media. So it's okay to spend as much time on there as I possibly want to, because it's a thing I have to do for work, you know? So I sort of got into that trap of thinking that was okay. And definitely to some extent it is, because I know I need to be able to be on there to be able to post content, and I need to be able to stay relevant and be able to really have my work out there, because I know that's one of the biggest ways that I connect with a lot of people. So I'm really glad that I have that platform, but it's all about finding that sort of balance. And I came to that head over the week of trying to find that balance. And I was glad that I took a bit of time away, because I haven't gone back in as hard as I was last week. I haven't gone back in as hard this week. So that has been really nice. And I'm going to be looking at some of the strategies that I can be using to sort of prioritize my time and only using my work hours to work on social media content moving forward. One of the other things that I started during the week was I started reading the book Atomic Habits. Now, this has been one that's been sitting on my shelf for probably the past 6 or 8 weeks. It's something that I've been wanting to read during lockdown, but I've been stuck up reading other things and exploring other different things, and haven't really sat down and really sort of prioritized that. And it's been something that I've been wanting to get back into. But I did pick that up over the weekend as I was off Instagram for the weekend, and I had heaps of spare time. As I discussed on social media, you may have seen I've been spending an average of, say, 2.5 hours on Instagram every single day. So to not have that time, that's a lot more time that I can be spending working on a lot of other different things. And so I picked back up in sort of reading that book, and I was really glad because it had been one that I've been wanting to start for a while, and it's been one that I've heard quite a lot of good reviews about. And I must say I'm already 5 or 6 chapters in and really enjoying it so far, only in 3 days, which has been really nice to have that read. It's been really rejuvenating to me because it is something that I'm very interested in and very actively trying to work in. So I'm really always trying to open myself up to as many different experiences and as many different ideas as I possibly can, because I think that is one of the best ways we can grow. And so to have some of those ideas really there, explained in a sort of different way than I may not have previously heard them. I think that's one of the big things about education, is explaining things in ways that really connect with different people. That's one of the big things that I think about this podcast, for example, is that I don't think I'm coming up with any brand new ideas that no one else has ever had before. And I'm not in a position where I would think that highly of myself to say that that is what I'm trying to do here. But I would say that I'm trying to position the things that I already know in a way that is easily digestible for other people. So that is all that education really is. It's not anyone coming up with new ideas. It's people taking information that they already know and sort of packaging it up in a way that people can easily digest it and other people can understand. There are a lot of people who would hear my podcast and wouldn't understand what I'm saying because I don't speak in the way that they would like me to, or they don't speak in a way that that they would understand. So it's all about that. It's all about connection and being able to understand. And really reading that book, I sort of felt an instant connection because the way he was speaking was really nice, and I really connected with the way that the words were written down, even though the ideas are probably things that I've heard before. But I love the examples and the sort of style that he went about describing things. I just want to share one of the big takeaways for myself in the first couple of chapters. I won't spend too much time talking about this because I would encourage any of you guys to go and read this book for yourself. But one of the big takeaways that I got from the first couple of chapters was to focus more on your identity rather than on your goals. Now, this was something that I innately knew because I knew that was more important to have a longer term goal and a longer term identity, or something you were trying to work towards in yourself. I think that is the aim of all goals. The aim of all short-term goals is to produce an end product, an end identity in yourself. So you want to be moving towards some particular destination of the type of person who you would like to be. So when we talk about trying to pursue a goal, we're talking about trying to pursue that goal because we think someone who sort of embodies the identity that we were after would have that type of goal, or who would do that in their own life. And he really framed that in that sort of way, in that we should be looking towards other people who are actively doing these things in their life and trying to replicate their lifestyle rather than just having these set goals. So for me, this is something that really struck a chord, because when we have just a set goal, it can be easy to become unmotivated once we reach that goal because we don't know why we were actually trying to achieve that goal. If you just have a goal in isolation, that's great, but after you reach that goal, it's going to be very hard to continue on. And this was something that I found earlier in the year, and I've spoken about this on the podcast, was that I had a goal of trying to run a half marathon earlier in the year. I'd been working up for it for about 3 months, and I finally got there. And then after it was over, I sort of fell away a little bit in my sort of habits and routines about how I was training for that half marathon because I didn't have anything else that I was really working towards, So when we don't have anything after the goal, if we don't know why we're trying to do it, then there's no reason afterwards. Whereas the real goal should have been that I want to become someone who runs, that I want to become a runner, someone who does that as a daily practice, someone who runs half marathons on the regular, as opposed to someone who just wants to run one half marathon. So I think that has been a switch for me in the past couple of months, and has really helped me on my practice of going for a run, has been to put myself in a mindset of someone who would go for a run, someone who I consider being a runner, and put myself in that mindset and think, would they go for a run here? Would they go for a run on this particular day? It's not just about training for this one end goal, but actually embodying that as a real lifestyle choice. So really coming to terms with that and using that as motivation to drive you forward, I think is one of the best ways that we can go about it. And it's really helped me in the past as well. I don't know if you guys noticed, but in the beginning of this podcast, I described myself as a photographer, as a podcaster, and as a small business owner, because those are things that I really would use to describe myself, or things that I want to be. And I think it's important to use that sort of language of being that type of person, rather than someone who's trying to start a podcast, someone who's trying to become a photographer, or anyone who's trying to start a business. I think I am that person already. So I've got to embody that personality type rather than saying that the goal is to be that. I have to say that I am that. So it becomes harder for me to then go against that. it becomes harder every time I think about an opportunity or I think about something that I need to do. Because if I am someone who's already a podcaster, would I just ignore an episode every now and again? Would I not be as strict on when I record, or would they be the type of person who sits down and records a podcast every week because that is the schedule that they record on? If I'm a photographer, would I have an opportunity and then sort of turn it down? Or would they be someone who's taking every opportunity they can get and be really working as hard on that craft as they possibly can be? So knowing what the goal is of what the personality type you want to be, and then trying to embody that in your own life. And I think that has been something that I've really taken away from it. And just the way you described it really helped me. And I think it's definitely been something that I've been trying to do before in the past, but just the way that he worded it just really helped me. And I would really encourage anyone to go and read that book, because I think there's so many small little things that you can take away from it, and you may gain something completely different from that than I possibly did. So I think it's really interesting, and hearing from different perspectives is always one of those great ways where we can take little bits and pieces, because every different thing will resonate with everyone a little bit differently. So that has been really nice, and I would encourage anyone to go and give that book a read. And now the last thing that I want to touch on before we jump into today's topic is something I spoke about last week, and that is that weddings are back in Sydney at the moment. So we can go and take photos at weddings again, and I'm very excited about that and looking forward to it. And over the course of the past week, I had one of the couples who was meant to get married in August recontact me and say that they've moved up their wedding to this Friday. So that is very exciting, and very exciting that I'm going out to go and work again, but also really scary. And I think that is where the idea for today's podcast really came from. I think I did have an original idea of what I wanted to record on this podcast, but that was really something that was really raw to me, is the anxiety that comes about actually going back out to work again. And I've heard this from a lot of different people. So I really wanted to give a little bit of my experience around that and sort of speak about it in this podcast, because I think it could be something that impacts a lot of people, and I could be ahead of the game here because a lot of other industries haven't opened back up again. And so I think that this experience will be able to help people, and I would definitely speak on it next week after it happens. But I think now just giving some of my raw thoughts as I currently feel before the actual thing happens, because I know that we all think that things are more scary before they happen. So I want to give some of my thoughts in today's podcast and give some of my ideas and some of the things that I'm trying to work on moving forward, because this is a very scary time for me, and it's something that I think about a lot, and something that I do have a lot of stress about. So I really am excited to make this episode, but I'm also very excited to get back out there and sort of start taking photos again this Friday. And I'm very glad that those guys reached out, and I'm glad that they have the opportunity to get married again now, as that was off the table for quite some time. And I'm glad that they've really taken advantage of that, because I think that is going to be really nice for them. It's going to be a really special moment that they will always remember. And I'm so glad that I'm able to be there and be able to help them really be able to capture that moment, considering that there's not going to be as many people there. So that is going to be very exciting as well. And so now that you know the little bit of backstory behind today's episode, I really want to jump in and give you guys some of the thoughts and some of the ideas that have been going through my head over this past week, because I don't think that these are unique to me, and I want to make sure that I normalize this as much as possible, but also give you guys some tips and some of the things that I've been thinking about in ways that I can sort of overcome this. And I think hopefully by sharing this now, I think that it could help a lot of people moving forward when other industries do start to open back up. And so for me, this is really one of the longest breaks that I've had between going out and working. So I haven't actually been out and taken photos of anyone for about 15 weeks, and that's quite a long time in any industry to be able to take that much of a break, but also having not used my sort of camera in that sort of time as well, because we've been in lockdown at home and I haven't gone out and used my camera at all in the past 15 weeks, besides just recording this podcast, which I am recording on my camera right now. But besides that, I feel like it's a big stressor on me, because really to some extent I start to think that, what if all those skills aren't there anymore? What if where I was before, all those skills have just sort of gone away, and I've got to sort of relearn those again? And especially in a high pressure situation like taking photos of a wedding, you definitely don't want to have those thoughts going through your head. And especially if it does take a little bit of time to come back, that is not the time to get them to come back. You want them back before then, because that is a very high pressure situation. Whereas if you do miss something, you only have that opportunity once. So it's hard for me. And I think I've been going through this over the past week and trying to tell myself that it's okay, and tell myself that I know what it is I need to do. And I've been working on this for quite some time, and I know how to use a camera. It's not like I immediately forget that overnight, but I don't think that alleviates all the pressure that does come along with actually going back out there and working when you haven't worked for so long and you haven't convinced yourself that you're up to any sort of standard. I know for myself, it's always been a challenge for me to go out and work, and it's never been something that really comes easily to me. I think working with other people, there is that sort of pressure that you have around being with other clients and being with someone who's sort of paying you to be there to work, there is always a pressure there. And that's something that I was always aware of. And I know that I'm in an industry where that is the case, that I'm always going to be working for someone else. I'm never going to be doing work just for me. So understanding that is sort of the first step. But then also one of the ways that I sort of overcome that is by working as often as I possibly can, because normalizing it in my own head and becoming comfortable with it is something that takes time. So working as much as I possibly can is one of the big ways that I can use to overcome that. But having had to have this break for quite some time, I think has been challenging. And so it is something that I've really had to reflect on about how I can go moving forward, because I don't think this break is going to be the only break that I have in my career. There's definitely going to be longer breaks as the years roll on, and there could be substantial breaks in between. So I don't want to have to come to this point every single time and be so stressed to get back out there working again. If I just was to have 3 months off here and there, I don't want to have that same stress every single time. So having faith in my own work and telling myself that it's okay is only just part of it, but I think it is an important way to look about it. And it certainly isn't just the skills aspect that I really have stress around. I think for me as well, it's the whole sort of interacting with others is one of the biggest things for me. And that's definitely not something that's ever come easily to me. One of the things that I knew when I was going into the wedding industry was that I would have to interact with a lot of different people. I love going out and taking photos with just 2 people at a time and going out and just having an afternoon with them and having an hour where there's no sort of pressure. We can sort of create art that we really want to create. But in that sort of wedding environment, it becomes more stress because one, you don't have the time to be able to take as many photos as you want because things are happening in front of you where you need to get the photo, and it's all up to you, which is nice in one way because most of the time you're working alone. And in that instance, there is a lot of pressure because it's not like you can really go back on anything, but you are working alone. So at least in that situation, there's no real distractions from anyone else. But also there's a big aspect of it where you're sort of coordinating a lot of different things after the fact, and you're talking with multiple different people. So that for me has never been something that I've enjoyed and never been something that I've been really overly comfortable with. It's something that I really enjoy after the fact. And I suppose it's like any of those things that really, I suppose if it's really good for you, then you know it's hard. And initially it is hard because it's something that I really have to work quite a lot at to get good at. And so that is one of the biggest stresses for me walking in is not having those social skills that I had built up before the lockdown, having not really seen anyone much over the past couple of months. And I think this is something that a lot of people will probably feel more than them actually losing skills. I think they will be more concerned about losing actual social skills and losing how to communicate with other people. I think that is something that we can all have a fear about, because having worked from home and having been home and not interacted with a wide variety of people for quite some time has been hard. I think for me, I've become accustomed to only speaking to a close group of friends, and that's great. And I still get that communication with those type of people. But working in an industry where I'm working with complete strangers most of the time, I don't know how they're going to react. I don't know how they're going to relate to me. So having experience and having opportunities to work with other people is the best way you can sort of grow in that, because by interacting with as many people as possible, you can sort of gauge a wide net of people who you can then draw upon, because I think a lot of people have sort of similar personality types. And so if you've interacted with a lot of different people before, you'd be like, well, I know how to communicate with these type of people or that type of person before because I've interacted with them just previously. But at the moment, I've only been interacting with my sort of close inner circle, and that may not be the most diverse group of people in their personality types. So I think that is going to be a big stress moving back in. And I know a lot of people have that stress as well. And that's probably the main one that most people would have. I think for me, I'm really lucky that I always work from home, and most of the time I'm working alone and I never have to work with other people. So I'm never going to have to go back into an office where there are other people working alongside me. And that is never something that I'm going to have to come to terms with. So for me, working from home and being in lockdown hasn't been as hard at the start. It was never a hard thing to have to come work from home because I was already working from home anyway. I think for me, the hardest part is having to go back to work. And some people, it was definitely the reverse. They really hated working from home and not having that social interaction. And of course I did as well. I really didn't enjoy the fact that I wasn't able to catch up with all my friends and family and things like that. But I always work from home anyway. So that to me wasn't such a big change. And I didn't find that such a stress. I'm still not finding it such a stress at the moment. It's interesting to speak to other people where that is really having a toll on them, and I can really feel for them and appreciate from their point of view how that would be really hard, and not having social interaction every single day how that is hard. But for me, that is something that I've come to terms with over the past couple of years, having worked from home all the time and spend most of my time alone in here in the office. So I know what work it is I need to do, and I know how I need to execute on it, and I'm okay to work alone. So for me, the opposite is true, where actually walking out of the house and going and interacting with people can be scary. And that is one of the biggest things that is really stressing me, and that I haven't done in quite some time, and that I'm really feeling for anyone in that situation where they are going to have to go back to work eventually. They're going to have to go and surround themselves by other people eventually. And I think it's going to be really hard. I think we're going to really see the sort of outflow effect of this sort of next year when people do go back to work, in that a lot of people won't know how to communicate with other people. I think that I'm in an okay position because I feel like I still communicate with people on a sort of regular basis, and I know mostly how to communicate with people, and I think I'm okay with it, and it's something that I've been working on quite a lot over the past few years. But definitely those sort of habits do fall away, and so you take a lot of time out from anything like that, it can become very hard moving back in. So I'm not really sure on how I sort of go about this. I think for me, one of the biggest things that I'm probably going to have to do is just throw myself in the deep end. It's one of the things that I've always done, is just throw myself off the cliff and see if I fly. So that is going to be one of the things that I do this Friday, because I think that that is the best way to sort of get over it and see how I really go. I can't focus on whether things go wrong or not, because any stage in your life, things can go wrong, and there's always things that could go wrong outside of control. As I said, when I shot my last wedding, things went wrong that I didn't even think would go wrong, and things that I thought would go wrong were easy. So you can't plan for everything, and things will go wrong no matter what. But to don't get so stressed about things going wrong, because things will go wrong anyway, and chances are it's not going to be the things that you think will go wrong. And I just have to throw myself in there and just be okay with the fact that it is okay to put myself out there as much. I suppose I'm in a really privileged position where I'm able to work as early as I possibly can. A lot of people won't be able to start probably until early next year again, and most people have moved their weddings back till next year. So not many people are really taking this opportunity to get married with the smaller guest numbers at the moment. So I'm in a really privileged position, because if I wasn't shooting this wedding now, I don't have another one till January, because the rest have been moved back. So it's really hard to sort of maintain that sort of breadth. If I was looking at like 6 months off, that would be very tough to walk back in. So this is sort of a halfway point, I guess, to my next wedding as well. So I'm really looking down the barrel of this again in the next 3 or 4 months, and that's something why I wanted to talk about it now. Why I wanted to get some of my thoughts out there and sort of think about it. And I've been thinking about it over the past week as well, and thinking that I can't go through this stress again. I can't be in that position again in another 3 or 4 months' time when I have to go and shoot my next wedding, and thinking that I'm not up to scratch then. So we need to come to terms with this now. And I think one of the big things for me, throwing myself off the deep end, is one of the best ways to sort of just get back in there. And I have to show myself that it's okay. Another one of the things I've been doing has been going back through my old images and going back through my old work, and sort of in a way sort of proving to myself that I know what I have to do, proving to myself that back then I didn't know as much as I do now. And so if anything, I'm in a better position now, even though I haven't worked for quite some time. I've sort of learnt a lot more in lockdown, and I've learnt my style more, and I've learnt what I really want out of this photography job as a lifestyle. So I know what I really want, and I'm all the more wiser now than I was then. So learning from those mistakes that I made last time, and really seeing that I made mistakes then, I'll probably make mistakes now, and I'm never going to be perfect, and I don't aspire to be perfect, because that is not the end goal. So showing myself that it's okay, and looking back through and sort of showing myself how far I've come. Even if I'm not leaps and bounds ahead of where I was last time, because I haven't had the opportunities to practice, at least I know that I'm not falling backwards, and at least I know that all the things that I've learnt and all the things that I've worked hard for over the years haven't just fallen away in the past 3 months, because I still know those skills. Even if they take a few minutes to come back, I still know all the skills, and I think it will be obvious on the day when those skills snap back in, and I think, I need to be here, there, now, because I've learnt that, and I've gone through that process of really hardening those skills over the past couple of years. In terms of other tips that I have to really mastering this, well, I don't really have many, and this episode wasn't designed to be an episode where I gave out a lot of ideas of what I think you can do to overcome this, because I think it is something that a lot of people feel, and the anxiety around going back to work is going to be something that a lot of people have to come to terms with over the next few months. I think some of the things that I've already spoken about, and then probably throw in a bit of self-confidence in there as well. I think that is one of the best ways that I've found over the years to sort of be confident in my own work, and sort of have that mentality of sort of fake it till you make it. Because for me, being out there and being confident that I know what I'm doing makes other people feel more confident as well. And even if I'm feeling stressed, I can't portray that on the day, because it isn't about me, it's about someone else being there on the day. And I'm sure in any work environment, it's the same as well. You can't portray that you don't know what you're trying to do, because that will just make the other person more stressed. And so for me, even though I think I know what I'm trying to do, I'm not out there completely unaware of anything I've tried to do. I'm not someone that's walking in for the first time and have never used a camera before. I definitely know what I'm trying to do, but the underlying anxieties need to be pushed back a little bit on the day. And I think the more you push them back, the more that you will actually sort of shine through and your skills will really come through. It's more of that story of where if you're a little bit unhappy, if you walk around smiling, you will naturally be more happy in your mood throughout the rest of the day, just from smiling and just from laughing at a few different things. Even if you were a little bit upset before, by walking around smiling, you will naturally improve your mood. So that for me is one of the things that I use, is trying to be as confident as I possibly can. And then somehow the skills sort of come back and I start producing work that's probably even better than the work that I've produced before, because I had confidence to ask things that I didn't ever think that I would ask. So throwing yourself out there and being as confident as you possibly can, even if on the inside you're really hurting. And I think that is one of the things that I'm going to be doing this Friday. It's really hurting inside, but I can't show that. And I can't show that I'm stressed. I can't show that I don't think that the work that I'm producing is amazing, because they don't know that. And they think the work that I'm doing is amazing because that is why they chose me to be there. And they wouldn't know anything, and they wouldn't be any the wiser of whether I think the work that I'm producing is good or whether I think it's really bad, because I don't project that onto them. And they really think the work I'm doing is amazing, and that's why they chose me to be there. And so I just have to continue to go along with that fact. And I have to be aware of the fact that I'm okay, that they chose me to be here. So I have to be confident in my skills that I have, because I'm here for a reason, and I'm the expert here. I'm chosen to be here as one of the 11 people that they can have at their own wedding for that particular reason, to record the day. And so I'm so thankful and I'm so glad that I'm able to be there. But I thought that I would give some of my insights today around why I think it's going to be hard for some people, and it certainly has been hard for me. And don't feel bad if you're in that situation thinking that it's bad to think that you want to go back to work, because for me, I know it's one of those things that's hard, and I know it's going to be hard on Friday, but I'm really looking forward to being able to get back out there and get back into the work that I really love, because at the end of the day, I really enjoy the work. It's just very stressful in the moment, and so that stress is always going to be there. It's never going to go away. And don't think that because you're stressed, that means that you're innately bad, or that you therefore aren't as good as anyone else, because I think everyone has these feelings, and it's just that some people aren't as comfortable with voicing them as others. And so being aware of that and understanding that what you're feeling right now is okay. And I just wanted to make sure that I put that out there in the world, and I hope this was able to be helpful for you guys. And so I think that is where I'm going to leave today's episode, guys. I really hope you did gain something from this. I hope that you remember to stay positive and keep reminding yourself that you're in this for a reason, and that you're a lot better than you think you are, because I think these ideas come up around a lot of different things, and we can be really negative on our own work a lot of the time. And so anytime that you feel yourself trying to do that, maybe go back and look at some of your old work and look at how far you have come, and look at how much you've improved, and remember that you are the expert, and remember that you're there for the reason, because you are able to do work that other people can't. And I think that really helps me, and that reminds me that I'm there for a reason, and that I must have some skills that other people don't have. And reminding myself how far I've really come is really a great way of showing myself that I've really achieved a lot, and I'm really proud of how far I've come so far. If you did enjoy this episode, I would really appreciate it if you did share it around with a friend. I've been saying this for months now, but the podcast continues to grow, and I'm under no illusion that is from you guys sharing these episodes around. So if you did enjoy this one, I would really appreciate it if you did just share it with a friend, or share it with someone who you think would gain something from this as well, because I don't think this is a unique experience. I think this is something that a lot of people are going to go through if they haven't gone through it already. I think a lot of people are going to be finding themselves in this position in the next few months. And I really hope that this experience of mine is able to give you some insight, and able to give you some things to think about before it may impact you. And I hope that we're really ahead of the curve here and getting ahead of the trend that I think is going to come next year. And I hope that I'm able to give some advice as we move into that stage as well. So if you did enjoy this episode, I would really appreciate if you did share it around. Or if you did enjoy this episode, I would love to hear from some of you guys. Like, what did you enjoy about this episode in particular, and why do you keep tuning in? It's hard on a podcast, I think, to know who the audience is. You don't really know who you're speaking to here. So to hear from any of them is really nice. And I'm really grateful whenever I get a message from someone saying that they've been listening to the podcast. And I really do appreciate that, because I use that advice and I really take that moving forward. And I'm really grateful that I'm able to provide advice to other people. So I'm really happy to accept advice from other people as well. But until next week, guys, I hope you have a great week, and I will speak to you all again next Monday. Bye.